General Anthony Anderson, National Security Advisor, Lieutenant Commander George Overton, Chairman of the PSOJ Committee on National Security and Justice, ACP Clifford Chambers, the new kid on the block, or the new man in charge of Area 3. Members of the media, other distinguished ladies and gentlemen, good evening. Wow. Good evening. Good evening. Thank you very much. Thank you. I must extend a very special welcome to everyone here this evening. But I have to single out, if you will allow me, to acknowledge our very special guests that are with us this evening. We have with us Major General Anthony Anderson. He is the National Security Advisor. We have with us Mr. Clifford Chambers, Assistant Commissioner of Police, and a man who is no stranger to the area, Lieutenant Commander George Overton. And as I had indicated earlier, he is Chairman of the PSOJ Committee on National Security and Justice. I also want to say thanks to a very special lady from the Office of the National Security Advisor. That's Captain, she's not here, but I'm sure she'll get the message. And that's Captain Heather Lawrence. She has worked very hard to make this happen this evening. Before I get into the message, I just ask that we welcome all these persons to Manchester. Thank you. This crime forum, organized by the Manchester Chamber of Commerce, is part of our efforts to advance discussions and effect changes across the parish that will improve our safety and security, and of course, ultimately impact the nation's development. Jamaica's crime problem, as it is now, is negatively impacting the society and the economy. It is pushing up the cost of doing business, and it is also a fear factor among our citizens. We need to better empirically monitor crime and implement solutions that will restore law and order and give confidence among us all. The issue of crime is daunting, and too often we default our thinking and discussions on the negative, causing us to sometimes lose hope. Yes, Jamaica has a relatively high rate of violent crime, and this had adverse effect on the citizens and the business community. However, a well thought out and balanced approach to deal with crime can improve our safety and well-being and the growth of the nation's development. The focus must now be on a significant reduction in crime and improvement in the safety among our citizens. As I've introduced earlier, we have with us a great panel to help us understand what is happening. They're all experts in crime, not that they are committing the crime, but they are so close to it in helping to prevent and to solve it. So we have them here to help us to understand what is happening and also what are some of the things that we can do to reduce crime and bring things under control. So ladies and gentlemen, thank you all for coming, and we look forward to your full participation and contribution in making Jamaica safe again. Thank you very much. At this time, I invite Ms. Kenesha Dwyer Powell, an Assistant Director at the Manchester Chamber of Commerce, to introduce our first two speakers for this evening.
Thank you, Mr. President. President of the Chamber, Mr. Garfield Green, Major General Anthony Anderson, ACP Clifford Chambers, Lieutenant Commander George Overton, members of the media and specially invited guests, a pleasant good evening. I have a task this evening to introduce two of our speakers. I am delighted to do so, and I will introduce them in the order that they will speak. So first we have Lieutenant Commander George Overton. He was born in the parish of St. Andrew, where he received his high school education at the Jamaica College. He went on to join the Jamaica Defense Force in October 1974. He received his initial training at the Britannia Royal Naval College. He served in various capacities within the JDF, including aide-de-camp to His Excellency, the Most Honorable Sir Florizel Glasspool, Governor of Jamaica. He was also commanding officer of the HMJS in Discovery Bay. He also served the Jamaica Defense Force as, he was also executive officer of the Jamaica Defense Force Coast Guard, and he's a graduate of the United States Naval War College, Naval Staff College. He retired his commission in 1989 at the rank of Lieutenant Commander Major and joined the Guardsman Group of Companies, and he has served in numerous capacities. He served the group as Managing Director of Brings Jamaica Limited, Managing Director Guardsman Armored Limited, and has been the Director of Operations of the group since 2003. He has had the responsibility of building out the Guardsman brand within the Caribbean. That's from 2003 to 2007, and that included St. Vincent and the Grenadines, St. Lucia, and Barbados. Lieutenant Commander Overton has given voluntary service to various organizations. He is a former member of the Jamaica Constabulary Force Transport Board, a former member of the Firearm Licensing Authority Board, a former first vice president of the St. Andrew Justice of the Peace and Lay Magistrates Association. He's currently the president of the Jamaica Society for Industrial Security. He has been the president since 2009, and he is the chairman of the Standing Committee on National Security and Justice of the Private Sector Organization of Jamaica. Lieutenant Commander Overton is the deputy chairman of the Rule of Law Working Group of the Partnership for a Prosperous Jamaica. He also represents the PSOJ on the National Council for Justice, so he's a man of many hats. Please give him a welcome. And our second speaker, ACP Clifford Chambers. He is former commanding officer of the JCF, Counterterrorism and Organized Crime Investigation Branch, CTOC. Mr. Chambers has over 28 years' experience in crime and security management. His training experiences include strategic planning and leadership, operational management, tactical policing operation, command and control, major event security management, and research and analysis, governance and governability, and strategic international security. I've never known someone with a title that long, so it must be very important. He has held several positions within the Constabulary Force, to include Assistant Staff Officer to the Commissioner of Police, Assistant Administrative Officer and Operational Officer for 2 divisions: Commander of the Police Fraud Squad, Commander of the Organized Crime Investigation Division, OCID, and Branch Officer for CTOC. He was the country's security attaché to the Embassy of Jamaica in Washington, D.C., USA, where he served for 5 years, a post he relinquished in 2012. He holds a Master's of Business Administration from the Mona School of Business, a Bachelor of Law from the University of London, a Bachelor of Science degree in Accounting and Public Sector Management from the University of the West Indies, Mona campus. He also holds the graduate diplomas in Governance, Governability, and Security in the Americas, and Strategy and International Security from the National Defense University Center for Hemispheric Defense Studies in Washington, D.C., USA. He is a fellow of the National Defense University, alumni of the University of the West Indies, University of London, and Mona School of Business, and also a member of the Police Officers Association. So he is worth every word that he will tell us today. Ladies and gentlemen, I invite the gentlemen to come in the order they were introduced.
Thank you very much for your kind introduction, Madam. Mr. Garfield Green, President of the Manchester Chamber of Commerce, members of the Executive of the Manchester Chamber of Commerce, Major General Anthony Anderson, National Security Advisor, ACP Clifford Chambers, Officer in charge of the Area 3 Police Division. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, a very pleasant good evening to you. Your forum this evening on the relationship between crime and the economy is a very relevant one, having listened to the news in the last 48 hours. We heard just this afternoon the spokesperson for EPOC saying that the last quarter the country achieved a 0.5% growth. Some of it he attributed to the weather, and the other he attributed to crime. We also heard last night on the news the whole matter of crime in one of our tourism meccas, Negril, where tourists are being robbed openly in the town, on the beach, and gang feuds are playing out on the beach amidst the tourists. These are things that certainly the simplest of people in our society understand will impact our economy. The Jamaican economy is pretty much made up of 4 significant contributors. Tourism being number 1, agriculture, mining, and services. All of these 4 sectors reside in this beautiful parish of Manchester. We have South Coast tourism, very much a part of the Manchester landscape. Agriculture, you are next door to the breadbasket parish of St. Elizabeth, and it does overflow into your boundaries. Mining, you are certainly very much a part of the mining fraternity. And your latest growth sector is services. Now, how are these groups impacted by crime? Tourism, the Jamaican reputation has preceded us worldwide. Everybody knows that Jamaica happens to be one of the more violent places on earth. Very high homicide rates per capita, and we often make the news headlines for either protest demonstrations or criminal acts. And therefore, when tourists come to Jamaica, It is because we have a beautiful country, and our all-inclusive properties provide them that sense of security that they need to come here and see it. The sad thing is that the all-inclusive tourism product does not contribute significantly to the economies of the various communities. Most of those all-inclusive properties only bring back enough money to pay the bills that they have here. The profits go elsewhere. The communities, the restaurants, the bars, the attractions, all those other things that tourists worldwide spend their money on, we are denied that because of our crime reputation. That and harassment are the major issues. We have one of the most active cruise ship ports, probably only less to the Bahamas, that we have cruise ships coming in, and a number of the passengers that are here stay on board. They don't come off because they don't feel safe and they fear harassment. That lack of spend in the community causes no growth in that sector, where people could be opening restaurants, bars, attractions, those sorts of things. The growth and development of that sector is stifled by what crime has done to it. If we go on and we look at what crime has done to agriculture, that's headlines almost every day. Every farmer who plants or raises livestock in any parish in this country runs a significant risk of losing either the crop or having his livestock slaughtered and stolen. And with that, we then become more dependent on imports. That cost of imports is higher than what it would be if we grew those food crops. So we are taking the precious foreign exchange that we have and are earning from tourism and the other things to import foodstuff that could very well be done here. And those farmers who brave it and are able to produce and produce sufficiently for export, what happens to them? They get their goods to the ports, and their goods are contaminated with contraband, usually drugs, leaving the country. They are blacklisted as exporters. Their shipments face undue delays, and we can't get the prices that we really want because of the burdens that go with it. The mining sector. When you look at the mining sector, which I'm sure most of you living here in Manchester, you're very familiar with and probably extremely thankful that the Alpart mines are opening up again, and that whole lifeblood, which was the foundation of this great town of Mandeville, is opening again. But what comes with it? They call it liquid gold, the theft of fuel. You ask anybody who is in the trucking business, bauxite, or any of those activities, they spend a small fortune trying to protect their fuel in the field. The theft of metal, equipment, anything that can be moved metallic, goes to the scrapyard at 1/100th the price of its real value. And of course, the valuable equipment that half of the people don't know what is its purpose, being stolen from the sites. These things all have a significant impact because we're mining bauxite here, but if the cost of mining is extraordinarily high, we can't be competitive on the world market. Our bauxite exports are less because of the high costs of production. And it's these little elements that add to the cost of production. The recent introduction of the BPO sector to the Manchester community and to the wider Jamaican landscape brings with it a number of things that crime has a significant impact on. The one that I focus on very well, because I too, in the security industry, suffer from the impact of it, is the psychological impact that crime and violence in our communities have on our workforce. I have people coming to work at 7, 8 o'clock in the morning and telling me, "Commander, I don't sleep last night. I go under my bed because a gunshot barked the whole night. What impact does that have on productivity during the workday? An individual who has not slept is totally stressed out and is in no frame of mind to put out good work. That's an impact. That has a cost to the country and its performance. It also puts limitations on how we use our facilities. When somebody builds a factory or an office complex, they want to maximize the use of the resource that they have created. They want to be able to keep that factory running almost non-stop. But because of security concerns and crime and violence in the communities from which a lot of our workforce come from, we have to close early. We close and probably not run a late night shift because we don't want people on the roads after 10, 11 o'clock at night commuting to and from work. So we lose the opportunity of maximizing that resource. And in the BPO sector, what causes growth in the BPO sector is that you are able to do work on this side of the world for people who are asleep on the other side of the world. And you bring in from different parts of the world to your BPO facility when the other territories are sleeping. But if we can't run 24/7, we lose opportunities. And if there is another region who can offer that opportunity of running 24/7, it's only a matter of time that we start to lose the opportunities that we have gained through the BPO sectors. The whole matter of criminality and having to safeguard ourselves from sometimes our own workforce also drives up the cost of doing business. And you have to do intense background checks. You have to put in the security infrastructure. You have to do all the different things to protect your business from what the criminals may have planned for you. So you see how all of this comes together, that these are things that either crime stifles growth and development, or it impedes those things from progressing. And therefore, it's very important for us to look at it. The other thing that a lot of people don't realize, that as crime has an impact on business, there is an inflationary element. I come from private sector. We are driven by profit. And if there is high risk in doing business, and there are losses, unnecessary losses that are sustained in your operation, then certainly I need to be compensated in my pricing. I'm not in business for charity. No businessman in this parish is in business for charity. It is for profit. And therefore, the price of that product, that service, that commodity is going to be higher when the risks, the criminal risks of doing business in this parish are high. So if we don't bring these things, our own cost of living is going to be greater. Our own prosperity is going to be diminished. And therefore, it is important for us to bring crime and violence under control. The reality of the situation is that we live in a country where it is said that you stand better than a 70% chance of committing a crime and getting away with it. And if you happen to be caught, you stand greater than a 60% chance of not being convicted. Because by the time you get the matter to court, the witness is lost. And with those odds against us, and when we look around and we see that persons who may be involved in criminal activities reap the sweets and benefits of crime and are able to enjoy them publicly, then we have a real problem. Ladies and gentlemen, the chairman of the Economic Growth Council, when they wrote their manifesto, said, with all the things that need to be done, if crime and violence is not firstly brought in check, then there can be no growth in our economy. This matter of crime and treating with crime has to be a national problem. It has to be our collective effort, our collective stance that's going to change that, that's going to bring the probability of committing a crime down to less than 30% and getting away with it. And if you are caught and you go before the courts, you have less than a 10% chance of getting away with it if you are guilty. And if you are involved in criminal activities and you reap the economic benefits of criminal activities, we must deny that element of our society from the ability to enjoy it and keep it. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope I have made the connection between crime and our economy, because that was the task I was given in 10 minutes. Thank you all very much.
Good night, all. Protocol already been observed, and I was advised that I have 10 minutes, so I'm going to try to keep it tight. So I'll pick up from where Lieutenant Commander stopped, but I must put in a caveat before I start. The President, he took me out of my vacation leave. And I acceded to come because I'm actually looking forward to coming to the area and to work. So as it is now, I am the area designate And, you know, with the precept of the commissioner's prerogative at any point in time, he can reverse, but honestly, I'm hoping it doesn't. And I'm looking forward to coming and to be a part of law enforcement and or to somehow unleash my brand of policing here. I must, however, acknowledge that the commanding officer that you have here in Manchester has been doing a good job, because I've been looking at the statistics and he must be commended. And he will tell you that he and I go far back. It is with this same token that I must equally express commendation and appreciation to the Manchester Chamber of Commerce, because I've done some research and I'm seeing where they have somehow come in partnership with the law enforcement in Manchester, and in my opinion, that's what good governance and corporate citizenship is all about, and I really think high commendations are in for the Manchester Chamber of Commerce as well. And, you know, we have to be careful when we give out statistics at this time of the year. We see what that is happening. But I must note that the national figures on major crime as at September 2017 is reflecting some increase in some major crimes, particularly shooting and murders. We are recording at this stage 1,069 murders, which is a marked increase over that which was recorded at the same time last year. And with regards to shooting, we are seeing some increase of 217 when compared to the same time last year. You see, the national figures oftentimes reflects what happened at the divisional level, but not necessarily so in all instances. As, for example, with regards to shooting, this division is boasting, and I say boasting because it is significant when compared to what occurred same time last year. We only have 14 this year when compared to the same time last year when I think 23 was recorded. There is a national reduction in rape, aggravated assault, robbery, larceny. However, the reduction for this division, again, has to be spoken of because it is major. We're looking at major reduction. Aggravated assault, 29 compared to 37. Robbery, 71 compared to over 115 last year. Larceny, 17 compared to over 20 last year. And again, it goes to the effort and the work of the local law enforcement in tandem with entities like Manchester Chamber of Commerce and others that I'm sure. And I'm sure I'll get to know all the other NGOs and agencies that are working hand in hand with the law enforcement here. So comparatively, these are not bad figures. But you all will agree with me when we look at crime and the impact it has on one family and say that one crime, often by itself, is one crime too many. And therefore, we have to do all that we can, all that is within our power, to ensure that we have a downward trajectory where crime and violence is concerned. So we look at the reason why some of these crimes are being committed in order to have an understanding of the best solutions. And some of the solutions, as you're aware, are being unfolded by the law enforcement team here. We have gang-related activities, the proliferation of firearms, the use of firearms. We have the impact of lottery scamming. We have poor conflict resolution skills, to name a few. So within the context of Manchester, we have on or about 192,000 citizens. And to have 32 murders, 9 of which gang-related, 21 non-gang related, one would say, but that's not bad. But again, that is just too many, and we need to give it some attention. The good thing, though, is that the police know the areas that are of main concern. The police know the hotspot. They know the violence producers. They know the violence influencers. And with all of that, that will form some of the basis for the solution that will be put in place, and I'm sure it formed the basis for some of the solutions that have already been put in place. So there are some things that it's hard for the police to control, and that's where the community plays a critical role in having the police know what is happening in these areas. For example, it is my understanding that there is an increase in migrant criminals from bordering parishes, or even from as far as St. Catherine. It is my understanding that there, in recent time, some persons from St. Catherine were arrested in this parish who were wanted for several murders. So what will happen is that you'll find criminals moving around itinerant, not necessarily to commit crimes, but to hide away because they consider some parish a kind of a low key where the attention will not be put on them. And the only way we can actually know who some of these persons are is by good, basic policing with regards to proximity policing, community-based policing, and some of those will be looked at under my stewardship in a slightly different way, but it will only add on to what already exists because what is here is good. There will be a cocktail of policing activity geared towards intensifying anti-crime measures and restoring public order, restoring order in public spaces across the parish, and thereby improving the safety and security of citizens in the communities and in the public thoroughfare. Intelligence-led policing will be coordinated by the area office to be carried out by the divisions, and you might realize that at the area office there are 3 divisions that will come under its stewardship, which Manchester, Clarendon, and St. Elizabeth. And you might be aware, or might be following what's happening in Clarendon, and again, it is a hotbed, and again, we have to see how best we can look at best practice. For example, some of those that presently exist in Manchester, and see how you can export it to other parishes that can benefit from the good product that you have. There will be a specific focus on violence producers, as was mentioned, violence influencers, and I'm happy that the Lieutenant Commander mentioned this point, the financiers. There are people out there who are engaged in organized crime, and what they do is to finance some of these activities to form the basis or the continuity of some of these crimes which are happening in and around us. So there will be a particular focus on those persons who wield the influence, wield the power, wield the authority, and form the basis for the continuity of some of these crimes. It is intended that the police presence and visibility will be increased in crime hotspot, increased in town centers, increased in the commercial areas, and along certain roadways to intercept itinerant criminal and reduce the opportunity for crimes. Law enforcement curfews to reduce the potential of gang members. You reduce the potential of them reoffending. We have seen cases where persons have been arrested, charged, put before the court offered them bail, even though sometimes we wouldn't want that. And whilst on bail, even though there are conditionalities to the bail, they recommit. So one of the focus will see how we can tighten that up, because a breach in the curfew order means that that person can instantly be rearrested, put back in court for a breach of the conditionalities of his or her bail. So that is something that we'll be looking forward as well. And we'll also be ensuring that the detectives that we have in the parishes understand what it is to make an effective case to the court when we have good solid reason why a person ought not to be granted bail, given the nature of the crime committed, the gravity of such offense, and the risk he or she poses to witnesses, etc. I think that is one of the areas where we can ensure that there's some level of control and reduce, if you will, the level of crimes that we have been happening, are experiencing. Concomitantly, community policing will be led by the requisite unit, the Community Safety and Security Branch, with a view of improving the engagement of residents and to mitigate community-based and domestic violence. Again, there is a blotter on the statistics that shows that domestic violence is not looking as bossy as we'd want it to look. And it requires a lot of intervention, and I know that a lot of training is happening, so we just need to ensure that the trickle-down and spread effect from that reach where we want it to reach, and therefore that should also add value to the effort of law enforcement in reducing some of the domestic murders that we're seeing. There will be a bolstering of the initiatives with regards to predial larceny. Again, it was mentioned of how important agriculture is to the parish, to Jamaica, to the economy. And so we're seeing that sector bleeding as a result of theft. And so there'll be a particular attention continuously be given to that area. There's going to be several counter gang initiatives that I intend to bring. And a lot of these initiatives are carrying over from CTOC We're Ahead. And so it's going to be brought forcefully on what we do here in the area, with criminal gangs and other organized criminal actors contributing to the current spike. The area proactive investigation unit, we have proactive officers in all of the CIB formation. So those persons across the division will be better focused on proactively identifying these trends. So you would do what is necessary to ensure that something that would have unfolded had you not intervened doesn't reach that stage. So proactive officers will be looked at, they will be re-energized, they will be refocused, and they'll be given some task to complete. And once that is done, and you have the requisite check and balance and reporting structure in place, then it will impact the crime trend. A direct reporting structure has already been worked out with some lead non-geographic agencies like CTOC, where I was, the Financial Investigation Division, and the Major Organized Crime Investigation Division. Again, it was mentioned by the speaker before that the best and, probably one of the most impactful way that you can affect these criminals is to take away the asset, take away that which form the basis of the crime, which is the funds, the money. If they don't have that, that's where you hit them in the knees, that's where they will feel it most. So there's several legislation that we have now that you can look at that will help you in taking away ill-gotten gains, and that will be one of the focus. And again, you have the building of trust and confidence with the community, the populace. You cannot effectively police an area without the people who are a part of the community actively engaged in the process. So there will be several trust-building initiatives that will be looked at along with those which presently exist. There'll continue to be the whole concept of proximity policing, and importantly, we have to be looking at implementing business-oriented policing. Again, there's a business community here in the parish, and they too requires a unique form of policing that look at their needs. There'll be a sensitization of the public with regards to the risk and that might be posed by criminals who are out there coming back into the community, recidivism, if you mind, and there's a victimization aspect that has to be. They have to know why we're doing certain things, and when you know why we're doing certain things, then you will realize that it is important for you also to help in the process, because at the end of the day, we will all benefit. There are lots of security initiatives that are already here in the parish, and I commend them. I know that a lot of the areas, private and public, do have CCTV, but there are some challenges as it relates to the uploading of the footage for digital and forensic analysis. There needs to be some protocol in how you treat with the handing over of footage from a private security system that will make it evidentiary material for the prosecutorial process. So that has to be looked at. It doesn't make sense to have the footage that capture a crime being committed, but the way in which it was treated, the way in which it was captured, it does not and will not be accepted in court, because there's certain process that must be followed, and we also have to be mindful of the burden of proof and the substantive nature of the prosecution in ensuring that that which it has can only add value to the case rather than take away from it. There is talk now with regards to the zone of special operation, but I can tell you, or use this firm to say that curfews, cordon searches, operation, they do have a place in law enforcement. And it's just a matter how they're done, how they're managed, and I'm confident that if, and we hope it doesn't, happen where we will have to look at an area and be, designate it as a special operations zone. The National Security Advisor is here to probably speak more to that. But if needs be, I can guarantee that it will be in the interest of the citizen, the law-abiding citizens, and it will only add value to the law enforcement product that we intend to present to the people. So there are several other initiatives that I cannot and will not go into at this forum, but I can tell you that as it is right now, I am personally anticipating joining the area and meeting persons formally and informally, and to see what are the unique issues, unique challenges that you can put together in order to provide a unique security package to not only the parish but to each person. We know we have issues with extortion, and I always tell people that extortion is not something that you can put forward a wide-scale strategy and policy on. You have to understand the nature of the business individually, and then you tailor a package. So you're going to have general policing, but you're also going to have a kind of uniqueness of policing that relates to the parish. For example, Manchester is one of the parishes that it doesn't have it's not on the coast. It doesn't have a river or sound that runs. Just look at the uniqueness, and that requires a uniqueness in terms of policing. So I'm here. I will be here. I'm looking forward to working with everybody. I'm enthused, and just to say that I am grateful for the opportunity to be here speaking to you this afternoon. And going forward, you just know that I'm available, and I'll give my number publicly for those who would want to contact me for anything happening, and then we can pass it on to the commanding officer and see where we go from there. So again, thank you very much, and I'll build myself a question later on. Thank you much.
We take our jobs seriously. That's why we go beyond the call of duty to ensure that Red Stripes products and employees are never at risk.
We are always there to protect and keep watch. We take pride knowing that we do our jobs well as couples.
Whether private property or public institution, we are always on guard to make sure that things go smoothly.
I'm sure that's just a touch of what is to come. Let us give them a better round of applause. We have to thank Lieutenant Commander Overton for his presentation. He has certainly painted, he has done a very good job in showing us how crime is impacting the nation's economy. and ACP Chambers has also, not so much the figures that he has presented, but he has given us some assurance and some hope, that look, he's coming, he's going to be working with us, he's going to be working on what has already been laid by his predecessors and who are the others were left behind, to ensure that Manchester continues to be a safe place, right, as be one of the safest places in Jamaica. One crime is just too many, so we're looking forward to zero crime in Manchester when he takes over. Let us give them a round of applause again. And at this time, I invite Ms. Diane Suarez Ellis to introduce our next speaker. Welcome her, please.
President of the Manchester Chamber of Commerce, Mr. Garfield Green, Major General Anthony Anderson, National Security Advisor, APC Clifford Chambers, Officer in Charge of Area 3 Division, and Lieutenant Commander George Overton. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Evening. I am Mrs. Suarez Ellis, Junior Branch Manager of Guardsman Armored Mandeville, a part of the Guardsman Group, and I have been given the mammoth task of introducing our keynote speaker for today, Major General Anthony Anderson. Before he became Major General, he began his life as young Anthony Anderson, where he attended Calabar High School. I know where he's laughing because I told him earlier that it's the wrong color. However, after which he pursued and achieved both his bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering and his master's degree in defense administration from the Royal Military College of Science, Cranford University in the UK. He began his journey in the military in the 1980s at the Jamaica Defense Force as an officer. During his tenure there, he has held many progressive appointments, and as such, he has served as Inspector General. Later on, he was Colonel General Staff with responsibility for force policies on operations, intelligence, training, and civil military affairs. He also served as Commanding Officer for the JDF Air Wing. That's just a few of the many he has held in the JDF. Later on, in 2006, Major General Anderson was deployed to Trinidad and Tobago to head the CARICOM Operations Planning and Coordinating Staff, which was formed to develop the regional security plans for the Caribbean, participating in the ICC Cricket World Cup 2007. Because of this, later he became the first regional operations commander to implement these security plans across the entire Caribbean. Major General Anderson also served for 2 years as the Deputy Chief of Defense Staff with responsibility for force strategy, future plans and development, and then thereafter he served 6 years as the Chief of Defense Staff. He's currently the director on the board of directors for the Hart Trust NTA, and he's recently appointed as Jamaica's first National Security Advisor. I know that I have not even scratched the surface of all that he has achieved, all that he has accomplished. However, we don't have the time to go through all of that. And so without further ado, I ask that you help me welcome Major General Anthony Bertram Anderson, our keynote speaker.
Mr. Green, other members at the head table, sorry that I have my back to you. It's just the way it's set up. And members of the Manchester Mandeville community, good evening to you all. Now, I have a little challenge, and that is that you've been sitting down listening for a while. And so I have to make sure that I engage you, one. And the second one is that I don't take too long, because I'm sure, and I saw on the program, that there's an opportunity for some questions and answers after I'm done. And I'm sure even the other panel members also would like to answer some questions about some of the things that concern you. So let me just start by thanking Mr. Green and the Chamber of Commerce for allowing me this opportunity to have a conversation with you. That's what I say. I don't want to speak at you. Let's have a conversation about a matter that significantly affects all of us. When we heard from, firstly from Commander Overton, who made that connection very well between the crime in the country and the economy, and that, although he was speaking in the present tense, has been going on for a while, and we know this. Perhaps less so for Manchester, where the benefits of an improved communication system and road network over time has allowed the ease of movement of things from elsewhere to here as well. So in life, quite often your blessing is your curse also. Similarly, we see the same things occurring as we try to become a more digitized society. As we put more things online, the idea of cyber protection now comes into play. The benefit is that you can be where you are and access what you want. You can also now sit down on a Sunday evening and do your banking, as opposed to lining up in that banking hall and doing all of that. That's the pro. The con is that now bad guys can access. And they don't have to be even in Jamaica to do so. So this is the benefit and challenges that come with development. Now, having ACP Chambers here in Manchester, of course, he's coming from an area in the police force that was dealing with all of these issues. And he's somebody I've known for a while, certainly from he was in Washington. And so I expect that he'll bring with him a certain innovation to how he deals with things. Now, there's a point, and, you know, he gave commendations to the superintendent in charge of the division, and quite rightly so. Your figures are trending in the right way. But figures are one thing, is how people feel. Not just here in Manchester, but nationally. So even if crime figures are trending down, if people don't feel that effect, then of course it's really not real. Now, even if crime figures are going down, as long as violence is going up, then we can take no comfort. Because there's one thing to lose things, but violence brings it much closer to home. It brings it to the person. And so that's a greater concern. And where you can make business decisions around how you balance your security costs, your pricing mechanisms, your opening times, and make business decisions designed to give you profit. And if adding all of that into the mix, you come up with, listen, even in this crime environment, I can do business successfully, then you may still conduct business. Of course, you will not realize your potential at all. If, however, it becomes a matter of violence to the person, those decisions reverse. If you can't be safe doing it, then you start to think about alternatives. So if you think about that from a local perspective, that's one thing. If you think about that whilst you're trying to attract foreign investment, then that becomes another discussion. So here we are. And what I want to do in the few minutes that I'll interact and we'll have this conversation is highlight how currently we're trying to address some of these things. The first, and I think the most significant thing, is to make that realization that there is this link between growth and violent crime, and crime in general. It saps away at your ability to progress your economy and grow your economy. Now, when you understand that, and I think the chairman of the EGC was quoted earlier, when you understand that, then it starts to inform how you need to prioritize the way you deal with this matter. So a couple of things have happened. Obviously, that realization was made. The multidimensional and multifaceted nature, not of crime, but the roots and causes of crime, means that a single ministry and a single agency cannot deal with it. It requires a national approach, but more importantly, within government, it requires an all-of-government approach to dealing with this challenge. So, again, this is something that's not unknown. It's something that has been said before. We need an all-of-government approach. But what does that mean in real life? I mean, how does that manifest itself in what we do? So, let us look at it this way. The seriousness with which the growth and crime connection is taken has caused a number of the things relating to crime and the underlying issues to be pulled to the center of government. So let me show you one way this has happened. For the first time in Jamaica, included in an IMF agreement were measures and benchmarks related to citizen security and public safety. Previous benchmarks related to fiscal matters. This is a first for Jamaica, and it's a first for the IMF. They have not done this before. They have recognized this reality of this connectivity. And the fiscal benchmarks that were in place that have created the foundation of economic change that we've been seeing, which started under the previous administration and has continued, a similar type of approach is desirable to get the lasting effect required for this area of crime. And so, enshrined in this standby agreement is the benchmarks relating to citizen security and public safety. The other thing, of course, is that our security environment, depending on who you speak to, sometimes, and the security architecture or superstructure, depends what language you want to use, is often described largely as police action. It or the police force, the JCF is at the center of it, which they are. But they're not in it alone. So let's just look at what we have. And this is not a recent thing. This is how we've operated over time. You have the Ministry of National Security, which takes lead on national security matters. And the Constabulary Force, the Passport, Immigration, Citizen Authority, and the Department of Correctional Services is in the Ministry of National Security. The JDF is in the Ministry of National Security for some matters and straddles across to the Office of the Prime Minister because the Prime Minister is the Minister of Defense. The Port Security Management Limited is in the Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation. The Port Security Corps is in the Ministry of Transport. The Jamaica Fire Brigade, the Office of Disaster Preparedness and Emergency Management, and the municipal police are in the Ministry of Local Government. The Customs, the Revenue Protection Division, and the Financial Investigative Division are in the Ministry of Finance. And we have a courtesy corps as well. A police force now. Okay. So, these agencies all are contributing to this thing called citizen security and public safety, but they're all in different ministries. I named what, 5, 6 ministries. That is all part of our security architecture. So how do we get all of this to work together? And if it's not working together, how can we expect to have the kind of results that we want? So you have to do it by bringing together these things. First thing, you have to recognize that this is actually the case. Because if you haven't thought about it before, you probably never realized that it was so splintered. So you're trying to do a few things. So you're trying to coordinate the activities of these agencies across this architecture to give a result. So part of the functions, part of the way you do that is to establish in a more substantial way a National Security Council where the representatives of various agencies and departments and people dealing with this matter come together centrally to deal with things. So that's part of it. Now, the National Security Advisor Office assists in that coordination process and supports the council. So one of the things we do is reach across the spectrum to bring people together to deal with these matters. We also look at this, the benchmarks, and engage the ministries so that we can keep this thing moving along to try and get the results we want. The other thing, the other approach, or other approaches, are how we deal with the inflow of contraband into our space. The fact of the matter is, I don't think you can ask anybody and not get an answer that guns are a problem in Jamaica. We don't manufacture them. Every one of them comes in. And so it's only with investments, and some investments have been made, significant, in protecting that border that we're going to stem the flow. And so one thing are the assets that have been procured for the Coast Guard, but on the other hand, you also need a means of identifying and tracking anything that's in your space, and there are some investments in that regard. We also clearly have to make the police's job easier in terms of how they access information and data, how they capture it and access it. And to that extent, there are investments and developments that are going to come on board pretty quickly in terms of technology input into policing. And that and people have heard about station diaries and various other things, electronic means of doing that. But what you don't want is an electronic version of a paper system. You want an electronic system that allows for single entry of data that's uploaded. So if you go to the scene, the information that you are writing in your book, so you don't have to go back somewhere and type it again, the system needs to allow you to upload it right then. That way, and if you think about it, when something has happened and the police arrive at your house, you've had a break-in or whatever it is, and you want to be able to perhaps give your statement of what happened there and then. I'm just saying that as a person who has been affected, you may want to do that there and then. So these are some of the things we have to consider. How do you do that so that you don't have to go to a station? Because the process of going to the station does two things, of course. It carries you into, you have to leave where you are and go there. And then you have to go through a process which involves your time, etc. So with the best will in the world, the more people that the police force can keep out and still have an effect and still have that relationship and still deal with the matter is the better for them and the better for the customer. And the banks have learned this. So that people who go to stations need to, as opposed to people just come to give information that they could give anyway. So I'm just saying, these are some of the considerations when you're dealing with this matter. In the suite of responses, and perhaps, I don't want to go on too long, so let me speak about something. The initial request that was made was around zones of special operations, and if I could speak a bit about that. And then I got another request to broaden it. So zones are a tool in a context. Zones alone are not going to solve crime in Jamaica. We know this. But you need a suite of tools. And one of the things you can't do if you want success is to keep doing the same things you've been doing all along and not getting success. That doesn't make sense. So you have to do new things. And you have to adjust those things as you do them because they're new to get them better. So what does the zones do? And there's an act, but what does it really do? What it does is focuses and it leverages all of government to focus on a particular area geographically. It's a law enforcement operation combined with a social intervention and development operation in one act and in one process. Now, the devil, of course, is in the detail. How well things work is how you execute them. But if you think about it, and think about how you would approach a circumstance of crime in depressed areas, if that social intervention and building and community change process is not a part of your law enforcement, you'll be doing it over and over again for a very long time. The fact of the matter is that the activities largely within a zone and the social intervention component of it could be done anyway. So why haven't we ever in any substantial way? Because there's never been a guiding document that says, okay, this is what has to happen. It has been up to various people to get it done. It has previously been led by a ministry. And the reality is that each minister is a minister. And the priorities will differ. So unless there's a central understanding of what the priority is, you are not going to get the result you want. What is good, because the first zone was declared on Friday, this is now, what are we on, Thursday? Thursday. The good thing is that I have seen is the level of enthusiasm from ministries and agencies to support it. And also a lot of feedback from the ground who are people who are in the area who are happy for it to be there. So, as I say, so broadly that's what the zones do. Now, the discussions therefore can only be about should you have done it quite this way or quite there, or why do you go there first, second, third. The fact of the matter is, that's not the key. The key is that place, wherever it is, whether it's Mount Salem or other places that we know have had serious challenges over time, should we, as a nation, invest in these communities? Should we? Should we not give the people there an opportunity to actually live like how people live in Mandeville, in Manchester? Yeah. Because people, you can't be scared every day. And you can't be so scared that normal services that the state offers can't go there, are not there, they're not present. That's not acceptable. So we have to make it an acceptable place. So that's all. And I mean, I'm willing to take questions afterwards about zones. So let me put that. I'll just touch on one area further, and then I'll leave it at that. Critical to any lasting solution, in my mind anyway, is how we deal with our young people who are unattached. Criminal organizations and gangs recruit from that pool largely. How do we narrow that pool? By getting people who were unattached, attached. Well, a couple of ways. It means, though, largely, that you have to put in place, you have to, one, focus on it, because what you focus on gets done. And again, you have to bring together disparate parts of the system that will engage them to carry them from where they are to where they need to be. So let me give you an example. As they said when they introduced, I sit on the board of Heart Trust. Now, as it's been in the media, it's been in the public sphere, that there is a process of merging and bringing together Heart Trust, JFLL, the National Youth Service, what used to be, somebody help me, JFLL, it's the, right, Jamal, used to be Jamal, it's Jamaica for lifelong learning, right, so okay, sorry. I actually sit on that board, so it's bad that I actually forgot what the thing is, but they'll forgive me, because we're working together to do some good things. National Youth Service and the Apprenticeship Board, bringing them together will now leverage all of that to get the outcome, because in these agencies, each one does fantastic work, from what I've seen being involved in them recently. But how much better could the work be if it was synchronized? So Heart Trust requires for matriculation grade 9. How much of the unattached are at grade line level? Some are, some aren't. How do we create a process that somebody, a young person who's unattached, can come in, walk in, or you can reach out and say, wherever you are at this point, I can take you through a process that drops you out where you want to be. So if you're at grade 2 level, I can, and you think about it as developing the workforce and developing the potential of the people, of these young people, then you can take somebody in who is at a grade 2 level through the programs that JFLL offers, but as part of a workforce development program. When they reach a certain level, then they go into another stream. Then you can start accessing the vocational training and so on. But what you've just changed it is that you have to somehow work your way to get to grade 9, and then, as opposed to a process that says what you need as a young person to move yourself forward is your interest. Your interest in advancing yourself and the interest in getting something done. Now, if you think about that, which is an education thing, that has significant impact on security. You're narrowing the pool. You're creating alternatives and options for young people. Critical if we want to get out of this. So on the other side of that, these young people who go through this process, and one of the key elements of it is the HOPE program, of which the employment part of that is the employment policy, which is LEGS, work to learn, earn, give back, and save. If you think about how the National Service Corps work, it's been pulling people, young people in, carrying them through a process of socialization, which is almost like civics, about what does it mean to be a citizen? What does it mean to be Jamaican? What does it mean to join the workforce? It means you have to reach work on time. It's simple things as simple as that. You actually have to go to work to be in the workforce. And you don't go to work when you feel like it. So you start at wherever people are. There's no point wishing that they are somewhere else. You have to start where they are and take them to a process. So the National Service Corps that have just started, I think they've reached some 500 people, and they're increasing. Of course, it's going to increase rapidly as they get things together. These service corps are the way that they'll deliver this advancement of young people. So that's a critical element of this. And of course, there's the piece that the Jamaica Defense Force is doing. You had legislative change that now you have a national service enlistment designed to take people in for a short period of military service and out the other end back into the workforce, having learned something, having earned some money, having gotten used to the process of actually getting up on time and actually having to follow structure. And then you have provided this workforce that we can recruit from, the JDF, the JCF, and of course, Guardsmen. But corporate, that's where that piece, that combination of private and public sector comes. What's happening is that you're going to get these young people. Now, it's going to be important to engage them, to keep engaging them. They need work. And the reality is, it is the Chamber of Commerce that's the engine of that, really. I mean, it was one thing to be employed in the public sector. But really, as you grow, you need to take in some of these people. What has been found so far, the feedback on some of the the youngsters who have recently come in and gone through the program. Organizations that took a few have asked for like 40 more. Give me 30 more. Because they're different. I mean, normally they wouldn't have perhaps had the opportunity because of their address. It's a reality. And it's not a poor reflection on business people when they ask for these things at all. It's just a reality. Because the business person has to consider many things. Not that the person coming with an address is bad, but the person may be subject to influences within the community that they cannot get away from, they cannot escape from. So as a business person, you do that. At CDS, when I used to have the CSJP program, those young people, at-risk people, most at risk, coming through our program, up to 450 of them at a time. What I did, apart from all the discipline and training and people conform, not because we forced them to, but because there's an example. And so they just come in line. It's amazing how it happens. People start to behave like the environment they find themselves in. But one of the key things we did, certainly from my position at the time as CDS, was that I'm going to lend you my address. So when you go for a job, it was from the Jamaica Defense Force. No matter where you live. We have said, yeah, you're okay. So if you think about it, the changes that need to take place in communities, in our country, there are a number of things that we have to do. There's a broad way. And I saw a kind of confused look back there, and I said I lent you my address. It doesn't mean that you don't have your own address. What I'm saying is that collectively, we together, you may have that address, but I'm going to say to the employer, listen, yeah, never mind that. Work with us. That's what I meant. So you didn't have to ask me the question later. Let me just clarify it up front. Okay? All right. Good. So, and I'm closed now because I think I've been going on long enough and people start to fade on me. We collectively obviously have to throw weight behind changing this circumstance. We who are technical people have to work to put our collective minds together along with people in the society who have ideas to come out with outcomes. We have to treat, if crime has tentacles and is pervasive, the solutions have to be pervasive also. We can't take a simple approach to a sophisticated problem. We have to take a more sophisticated approach, a broader approach. And I just wanted to outline a few of the things, a few of the approaches to this problem that are being taken. Some very short term, some very geographically pointed, some very broad, some very long term. Each of them important. The problem is, and it's not a problem, it's the reality, is that we're impatient, and we have to be, because our reality is as it is today. But let us continue, all of us continue, to try new things, to find new solutions and innovations, to get new results. Let's turn the trend around. Let's go in the right direction. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much, Major General. And maybe give all three presenters a round of applause, please. All right, thank you very much. I'm sure we have some questions that we would like answers to. And I'm also sure that we have some suggestions that we would like to give, you know, to some of the experts behind me. So I'm going to invite our director, Michael Gottshaw, who will moderate this section of the program. While he comes to the lectern, I just want to let you know that we have some security experts here, and we have things on display to the back of the room there that can better inform you on how you can help to protect yourselves, your property, your business. So please engage yourself and be informed.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good evening, everyone. Okay, members, we have heard from our three presenters this afternoon. Now is the time to give to get feedback, to share your concerns, ask the questions, give your comments, pose your questions. We want to do this in a very structured way, so we have a mic that would pass around in the audience. Just raise your hands, and we'll have the mic passed over to you. And we want to go through this segment in a very quick manner in the interest of time. All right? First question is from Mr. Horton.
Thank you, moderator. Mr. President, panelists, thank you very much for this intervention. I have a comment and a suggestion or a question. Major General Anderson has outlined in a very structured way, you know, an outline of the way ahead in a very positive and interesting and dynamic way. We are all business persons in here, and in business, one of the things I realize, we all have problems, but if we dwell on the problem, we will never solve the problem. So I have learned to say, outline our problems on one side and look at the solution on the other side. So Major General, you are the advisor to our Prime Minister and our Cabinet and all the team that works with you, public and private. So we are looking for the solutions, and I am confident that the Jamaican people are with you and with your target and your program. The difficulty I have is one of the difficulties in our blessed country is something called accountability. We are not accountable for what we do. It's always somebody else's fault. And the most recent thing which has happened in the last couple of days, the police force members that absented themselves on a most vital program to the solution of crime in Jamaica. I hope that some person in authority is going to take the decision to ensure that this does not happen as frequently as it does and as widely as it happens in our country. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Member Horton, for your comments. Mr. Chung?
Yes, good evening, everyone. At table. My name is Rohan Chung. I just turned 26. My name is Rohan Chung, and I just turned 26. Yes, a couple weeks ago. And I am definitely loving my country, wanting to have a family here, which is very important to me. So because I play chess, I like to plan ahead. So when I think about what's going to happen in the next 30 years. I've heard some remarks passed that if crime is a problem here, it affects all of us. So that means if there is every single community that are unable to afford certain education or access to jobs and other things, rise in the level of crime activities, you will feel the pinch to it, right? Is that correct? I learned something. I just wanted to make sure I understood it very well. But my advice as a chess player is to teach young people to play chess. Okay? Because what it will teach them to do when you try something and it doesn't work, try something else. And that's something I am passionate about and I've been pushing for a while. So my advice to the officers is for you to consider implementing chess to our young unattached youths. Thank you.
Oh, yes. Okay. Just a comment on that. Okay. Well, first comment. I play chess too. I've done for a long time. But I was fortunate to be part of a very recent discussion at the policy level where that specific thing came up, teaching young people to play chess as a means, as one of the ways of engaging their minds to find options on a way out. But let me just make a distinction here. I think that is important. That crime generally follows slightly different patterns than violence. And, criminologists and probably, police colleagues will be able to explain this even better than I can. But what I've observed is that whereas the opportunity or lack thereof can end up in people acquiring things, seeking money, stealing things, and so on. And there's a link there. With violence is a very different type of thing. If you want to predict an act of violence, look for the preceding act of violence. And that is going to line you up to where the next one will be. So from the police force, when something has happened and a violent act has occurred, one of the things is they look for right away, where is another one likely to occur? What's the reprisal from that first act? So there's a slight different thing. It doesn't mean, because the reality is that there are poorer places than Jamaica that have less violence. Right? So I just wanted to make a little distinction, but thank you.
Just to weigh in on the observation, it was mentioned by, I think, more than one speaker about the multidimensional or multifaceted approach to fighting crime. And when you look at approaches, the approaches go back to the root causes. And oftentimes there are various causes, and sometimes it's not the poverty often by itself, I was mentioned. When I look at Haiti, they're far worse than us, far, far worse. Our crimes are not that bad. But the approach that you mentioned is one of many that can be looked on. Absolutely. And so it's very, very important. Let me just underscore that. Thank you.
I'd also like to jump in there. We just finished a program up at the Hope Zoo in Kingston where we brought through a total of 40 youngsters between the ages of 8 and 16. Majority of them are already in the criminal justice juvenile program. And we brought them to the Hope Zoo, and in collaboration with the JDF, we taught them team building skills, self-respect, self-discipline, the whole 9 yards. But one of the other things that we did with these youngsters, we had them work with animals. And that dependency that an animal has to its caregiver, and that responsibility of caring and looking after something made such a difference in a very short period. 3 weeks each cohort lasted. And what came out was a softer youngster. The first day they came in, the only thing they knew to do was to lash out at whatever was not going their way. There was no discussion, there was no no understanding of the other side. It was just to rebel and lash out. But after working with animals for more than 3 weeks, these kids had an understanding and a caring that one of them even came into the program, says, I have never said sorry in my life. And something happened in the program, and without prompting, he said, you know, I'm really sorry about that. And these are the types of interventions. And as General said earlier, that the youngsters who came into the JDF program, because of the environment that they were in, they conformed right away. And our youngsters become what they live. And if we can change our communities to be softer, less hostile, less aggressive, that will be the first step in the right direction.
All right, thank you very much for your responses. We have another question from the audience. Could you just identify yourself, please?
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and especially members of the panel, distinguished members of the panel. I think this one is more unique to the Major General in that he is the National Security Advisor. One of the things that he brought out that I really appreciate and really liked is the fact that they were putting some youngsters who were unattached through the JDF and giving them new skills. Now, I really want to take you up on that one. That is something I'm looking at. I've been looking at for almost a lifetime. If you could advise your like the minister or whoever, the prime minister, all youth that are unattached, that means they're not moving up into the universities or to the sixth form. If you could have those unattached youth, which they are where the criminals get their mobility from. It's easy to mobilize these groups. If you could put them through the army, and I'm from Metro-Dade, and I really, so I'm in the security business as well. Now, these unattached youth would be easier, and I know Lieutenant Colonel Commander would ascertain to this as well. It's easier for us to employ these people, because sometimes if we're doing a recruitment and if you put it in a paper or you find that you might find 1,000 people come for the employment, and so maybe you need 50. So somebody just go outside. Where are you from? Where are you from? And that's where you start dismissing them from. Now, if these people were being brought up through the army, then we would know that there's a certain amount of discipline that will come with them, because everybody in Jamaica knows that there's a certain amount of discipline that comes with people who are trained or have been through the army. So I would really like, sir, for you to advise, if it is possible, to bring all unattached youth through the system, if it is possible, if and when it is possible.
Okay. There are clearly, so whereas there's a certain intuitive desirableness about that, there are certain realities in how you actually execute that. How do you pay for it, etc. Those sorts of realities face us. And so what you try to do is provide various routes to achieving that. So the military is one route. But what you want to establish is a certain base set of values that the people who go through any program have and that they get exposed to, and create an environment that is desirable. And so whether they go to Hope Zoo and learn that and learn other skills, they don't all, in other words, my point is they don't all have to go through. That's one way. But not everybody is suited for that. type of thing. And there are other options. And I guess as you can afford it, you can increase the program. But if you think about how service corps work, and you have something like a digitization corps, and you're producing young people for BPOs, etc., I tell you, and just make a comment on that. When you're looking for people for BPOs, and you speak to the people who run BPOs, and they say, what are some of the concerns you have around the people who come in? You know what they talk about? People coming to work on time. And these basic things are what concerns them. So you can use many programs, but you just fundamental to it needs to be some core value issues and behavioral issues that you need to address. No, I understand. No, I understand. Sure.
I think that it would change. I do believe it would change.
And I'm just saying that even if that is desirable, there are realities of how we get things done. So the point is, and let me make the point. The point is that what we are doing, what we need to do with young people, we need to do now. We need to do it right now. So we need all of these streams going, and we will modify over time what balance of things we do as you get growth, as opportunity arises, as investment comes, and you'll target what stream and how you stream people. Okay?
Okay.
One of the things I'd like to suggest and challenge the Manchester Chamber of Commerce on is to look at what's happening in your schools. And you seem to have leaned towards the military training. Certainly, from my experience as a youngster growing up, the Cadet Corps does the very same thing. And if I could challenge the Manchester Chamber of Commerce to work with the schools and get the Cadet Corps programs going again in schools, you're going to find the youngsters, whether they graduate or just pass through the school, come out with a different attitude and approach to things.
Okay.
Good evening. I really want to commend all the speakers. It was profound, pointed, very informative. My concern is about the overcrowding in Mandeville town, and secondly, the motor vehicle violation on the street. If the government would employ some DCs just to address the problem with the motorists on the street, the violation, that funds, the money coming from that funds will be able to fix our road and help to educate some of our children. And another thing too with sometimes when people complain about when they give evidence to the police and court, they don't show up in court for the hearing. And another thing, sometimes they cannot find the evidence or whatever to be taken into the courts. So that would like that to be addressed.
Part of the issue, part of the challenge that you presented just now, I'm sure the commanding officer for the parish is here. So if there is, obviously, some attention needs to be paid to the traffic management within the township, I'm sure that will be given some attention. With regards to the second point, how you manage your witness is very important in how the case is administered in court. On one hand, mainly because the court system now is so clogged up that sometimes if you do not constantly keep in touch with your witnesses, you lose your case. And gone are the days when a police officer would collect a statement, arrest a person, put the matter in front of the court, and then that's it. There have been changes over the years where the officer knows that there are several other things that have to be done thereafter. First and foremost is the risk or the threat that that person who provided a statement might be exposed to. And it gets worse given the length of time a case tends to go through the court. Now, with regards to the witnesses not coming to court, again, it's part and parcel of case management and how you deal with your witnesses. So one of the things I know that the detectives and the general police officers are being exposed to now is the constant communication and constant keeping in touch with your witnesses. And we have seen it bear fruit where even sometimes the witnesses are moved to another parish, but because of the relationship and association that the arresting officer has with them, the information will be provided that, hey, I'm leaving, and when is the next court date, and the communication continues. So it is very, very important point that you made, and it goes to how we can facilitate securing conviction after a person is arrested and charged. Very, very important point. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ACP Chambers. We now take another question from Dr. Reed.
Thank you very much, moderator. First, I'd like to start off by congratulating the speakers on the presentations. I found them very much to the point. I have a couple of comments and then a concern. The comments, first of all, the very structured program approach to unattached youth, I think is commendable. I think it's been tried in several locations at the same time. I think it is easy to get successes in those situations. What I think is necessary is to find ways to replicate this across the length and breadth of the country. I think the solution has to engage more of civil society. Whilst the groups, the Army, for instance, is engaged and a few others are so on, I think we have to find ways to mushroom this across the country for us to have the accelerated impact that we want to get. That is so far as the unattached youths are concerned. Somebody touched on the uniform groups, and it is intriguing to hear this because already we are planning a forum of uniform groups as part of the celebration of World Peace Day. And why that is important, and I'm happy to raise it here because it has been touched on, is because many of us have been part of these uniform groups, whether it be scouts or cadets or guides and so on. And I think part of what we're suffering from is that these groups, for whatever reasons, have been failing. And we have to find ways to expand these groups, the uniform groups, the scouts, cadets. The Army is actually making a strident attempt to do the same thing with the cadets. I think we have to do the same thing with scouts and guides and all these other groups, because they are potent forces in civilizing our young people, teaching them basic civility, respect for country, respect for symbols, respect for elderly, and so on and so forth. And so we are planning a forum in that same week of World Peace Day, where we want to bring in the ministry, the Ministry of Education, the principals, business persons, so I throw it out to the chamber, a forum where they can present the challenges that they are facing. And hopefully at the end of the forum, we will find potential solutions. One of the things I can tell you for a fact is, and why we focus on the Ministry of Education, is that when you speak to the leaders in these groups, they tell you that there is no shortage of young people to join the groups. What they have is a problem with the leaders. And it's a problem because most of the leaders actually come through the schools as teachers. And the teachers will tell you that they're overwhelmed with schoolwork. And so we have to find, either at the ministry level, the policy, or at the principal level, a willingness to reduce the workload of these leaders. Once upon a time, it was prestigious, in fact, for companies to give their employees time off to act as leaders in these groups. We have to get back to the days when these things are attractive again. All right, so I invite the chamber to attend the forum. It's going to be at either Session Hall or somewhere on the Tuesday, the 19th of September, where we hope to have these uniform groups presenting. And the population, the members we hope to draw from the business community, the teachers, the principals, and so on and so forth. To know my concern, somebody touched on it earlier, and it is a well-known truth. If you can take the money out of crime, crime will be significantly impacted. One of the challenges I'm facing now, and I know we're putting in the lesser legislation, I don't know though, and I'd like to get the impact from the panel. How effective are we now? How certain are we that we are going to make significant and rapid inroads in finding ways to take away the proceeds of crime? Because I think if we can do that effectively, we hear about it happening here and there. I would love to see it just overwhelmed us, where crime. I'll tell you something. I was listening recently to Deacon Thwaites and his program, and it brings out very well the problem that he's facing. He was at a school, and he was addressing graduates, and he was noticing that the students were not paying any attention. They were in fact looking through the window, and what they were looking at is a recent graduate who is now a scammer, who came into the school with a fancy car and jewelry over all parts of his body. And the fact of the matter is that was more attractive. It is going to be a struggle, and the way to deal with it, of course, is to take away the money. How do you do it? Are you confident that we're on the right path? We're going to get there very quickly, and so on.
All right, I'll start with the last part, and I think the General will deal with the one you mentioned before. As it is now, I'm comfortable with regards to taking the profit out of crime and the variant supporting legislation that we do have. Let's start at the beginning. We do have Proceeds of Crime legislation as it is, and there have been several amendments in recent time. And there are certain aspects of the legislation which in law we refer to it as strict liability. In other words, irrespective of the defense that the person is coming with, once the basic facts are there, he's convicted. So for example, any transaction over $1 million in cash is strict liability offense, that it's against the law. Simple. We do have the issue where if it is observed that a person comes in possession of an asset, car, house, motor vehicle, and in the view of the financial crime or the financial intelligence unit, he or she did not come in possession lawfully of the asset, they have the authority to go in and seize. The onus now will be on that person to come with documentation to prove that he or she come in possession of these assets legitimately. That's how the law is. And there are several reporting structures to it with regards to, we have the Caribbean Action Task Force that monitors the legislation, monitors the work of the Financial Investigation Division, and we have the Egmont Group, again, which monitors the effort of the country in facilitating the robustness at which the legislation is enforced. We have the money laundering legislation, which is doing very well. Last year, our records at CTOC showed that over 400 million worth of assets were seized. We're looking at real estate, houses, and high-end motor vehicles. Those eventually go to the state. We have confiscated accounts that has millions of dollars, although the problem is that those funds go into the consolidated funds that didn't go to the agency that facilitate the seizure, that facilitate more work. So those are issues, but there are a lot of things that are being done now. You have suspicious transaction report. If you deposit in your bank account, say, $1 million today, $1 million tomorrow, $1 million the other day, automatically a suspicious transaction report goes to FID, and that triggers an automatic investigation. There are a lot of things which are happening. The problem, though, is that they're not being reported, so people don't know. We have a police officer a few months ago who went and she purchased a truck, just a little over $1 million. But because of the legislation, police officer turned up at her door and say, hey, we realize this transaction took place. All we're trying to find out is that the source of these funds is not as a result of a legal transaction. She presented some receipts that she sold 2 vehicles, and then we said, okay, fine, thank you. So there are a lot of things which are happening where that is concerned. With regards to lottery scamming, as it is right now, the FID compound is packed with items that have been seized, and they can't come and claim them. Why? Because they cannot prove that they come in possession of the funds that purchase these things legitimately. So a lot of things are happening, and as it is right now, I'm comfortable that we're heading in the right direction where financial crime, financial investigation, seizure, etc. is concerned.
Just on your 2 other points, quickly. With respect to uniformed groups and their development, clearly there are some things, I know the JDF is supporting the development of cadets, but we have to also capture the people who are not in school, or keep them in school so that they can go through these programs. So that's the other piece of that. In terms of the programs for unattached youth, the reason why you're doing it through the entities that exist like HEART, along with the HOPE program, so these are all combined efforts, HEART, NYS, JFLL, apprenticeship, along with HOPE and so on, is for that very reason. These organizations have reach across the country. They have centers, actual physical centers, that rather than each one have a center doing their own thing, maybe they'll be able to combine to deliver whatever is required where it needs to be required. And also you have the community training intervention programs that takes it to people. So that's the whole, for that very reason, is one of the reasons why it just can't be a military thing. It has to be broader and more pervasive than that.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Reed, for your contribution to the discussions. We will take just 2 more questions. First from Mr. Nash, and then from our member further in the audience.
Good evening. My name is Leon Nash, a freelance member of the media. I'm going to address my first question to Mr. Overton. The PSOJ is a very large organization. What is what kind of collaboration do you have with the persons who are in the business of fighting crime in terms of your funding of any particular program at this time?
The committee that I chair at the PSOJ actually has a seat for the Chief of Defense Staff, who sends a representative, but it's his seat. We also have a seat for the Commissioner of Police, who has a nominated representative who comes to our regular meetings. So we're in constant dialogue with them as to how we can assist the various programs, working with them to understand their issues, how we can help them, but also for us to table what are our members' issues in doing business and getting on with what is required in the business world. So we work very closely. Our members, through that consultation, we provided equipment, numerous motorcycles, numerous cars. We've gone into car repair programs for them, a number of things. We have some initiatives on the table now, which looks at leadership development and preparation. So it's a whole host of things, but there is that constant collaboration. For my sins, I also sit on the Rule of Law Committee, working with Jamaica House and the whole National Partnership Council. And I'm also on the National Council on Justice. Because one of the things that we haven't spoken about here, it's been touched on very lightly, is that no level of policing will be effective if the wheels of justice don't turn effectively as well. So we work very closely with the justice program to ensure that we fix the issues, but we work efficiently and in a timely manner.
And may I just move down the line to ACP Chambers? Just asking you, you spoke about the whole matter of violence producers and financiers. Is it a short or long-term plan that you have for this region?
It is medium to long-term. Medium in the sense that with regards to the financier, there's some level of financial analysis that is required to look a little bit more into the funds, because what we realize is that there is legitimate funding and there is illegal funding, and how you go about with the FID, they know how to do it, but it takes time in identifying what is legitimate, how you deal with that, and what is not, and how you proceed with that. With regards to the violence influences, that is short-term, medium, and long-term. Some of these persons are known as it is right now, and sometimes it depends on the approach. You could do the disruption approach, or you could do the prosecutorial approach. The disruption approach is just to go in now, use law enforcement, things that you're allowed to do under the requisite legislation, and you could disrupt. But if you're looking to prosecute, there's a process in which you have to build and, I wouldn't want to say cultivate evidence. So when you use that term, people think that you're making things up. But you have to cogently gather the intelligence, and then you have to now go through the transition of moving from the intelligence to evidence to the threshold that it is required to prove criminally. And again, that takes some time, because when you look at the criminal case, it's not just on the balance of probability, it's beyond all reasonable doubt, and oftentimes it takes some time. So the approach, as mentioned, short, medium, and long, and it depends on the approach that law enforcement will decide to take at the point in time when you're looking at subject or subjects.
My final questions to Major Anderson. Are you concerned about the protection of our borders at this time? Are they safe?
Safe from, when you say...
You mentioned in terms of the inflow of...
Right. Well, yeah, so clearly there's illicit trafficking that has taken place and is taking place. What I mentioned is that there are investments that some have been realized already in terms of assets, but there are other assets to come on board and collaborations that should shrink the opportunity to smuggle things through our waters. So that's what I meant by that. If things can come into Jamaica now, absolutely they can and do. With the best will in the world and the efforts of the people who are protecting our borders, but that's where we are.
As the National Security Advisor to the government currently, are you, having looked back at the past maybe 48 to 72 hours with the operation, the zone of operation in the West, do you believe that those persons, the stakeholders, the police and the JDF in particular, that they have probably been left demoralized in some sense because of what seemed to be the failure of the zone of operation?
Okay. Now you started with a premise that I disagree with. I don't disagree. I don't agree that it's been a failure. I can't think how a 60-day minimum operation that is designed clearly to create space from criminal organizations that exist in that space, to allow for legitimate leadership in a community to be built, to change the face of the community in terms of how they go about business opportunities that are available, basic things that other communities have, that will require investment in all manner of things that make the community better. That in 5 days or 6 days we can say that that operation has failed. That to me makes no sense. It makes no sense whatsoever. The reality is that there are things, what we're doing now is that they're building relationships with the community, that they're building confidence. The fact is, until the people are confident that, one, you're going to stay, that this isn't some trick, that actually intervention is going to occur, the social party is going to come on board, and until you get that, when you build that confidence, then you will start to have increasing results. The idea that you're going to go in one day and then have some miraculous change defies logic, that somebody could have expected that. And so this weekend is the first formal social intervention event. As I said, the enthusiasm from the various ministries, departments, and agencies around this I found certainly beyond my expectations, because they want it to work. It is in no one's interest, no one, except probably the gangs that operate there, for this not to work. And so I disagree.
But are you of the view, though, that the objectives of the particular plan itself
Of the-
was of going into, for the zone of operation, the objective of going into this particular area, that it probably might not have been communicated properly and effectively so that persons could clearly understand why you were going there?
No, but hold on. Whether you go, whichever zone you go to, the objectives are the same. The objectives are laid out in the act. So it doesn't, whether you're there or any other place that qualifies as a potential zone, the objectives are the same. The objectives are to reduce the level of crime and fear within that community and to allow for the development and normalization of the community. That's what it's there for. And so the only discussion, and so what has happened is that you've had a lot of talk in the space that some of it doesn't really make that much sense, as you say, when we start to analyze the thing. So you ask why there and why not down the road. Well, the fact of the matter is that beyond the requirements of the legislation to declare, there are other factors that must come into play. Some of these factors that the security forces will consider in deciding where they think a zone should occur is, in your first zone, how complicated is it? How difficult is it to go in and achieve your aims in that space? What's the geographical size of the space? How many people do you have available? How much room do you have to adjust in terms of your deployment if you find that there are things that you hadn't anticipated? And how easy is it with a social intervention committee, when there has never been one before, to coordinate all of that and get something done? All of these factors become part of the process of deciding where to go. So it's not a simple thing. So, you're welcome.
Thank you very much. And our final question for the evening.
Mic check. Good evening to all on the panel. My name is Joel Cook and I am from the business Advantage Best Enterprises. I have a very important concern as it was just in the back of my mind as I am before Mr. Stafford started. You know, I have a concern that I realize that I will have to be faced with living with this in Spanish Town and into St. Andrew and downtown Kingston specifically, because of the nature of my business and the crime that has started to erupt in that area makes me very concerned where to actually, when I am ready to actually put the permanent head office in terms of the built-out space of that facility. I am really now looking into some other areas and how can the crime be curbed and what measures can be put in place to attract investors to invest in that area, especially into downtown Kingston also, because there I know is a Kingston Renewal development project by the Kingston Restoration Company. So what measures can be put in place to let business people feel more comfortable bringing their businesses downtown Kingston and being able to operate freely and can breathe freely and everything? Because my business is into construction and real estate services, among several other things that is as a part of Advantage Best Enterprises. So this is my question, and I'm really concerned because my general contractor said it to me about a couple days ago, say he would never advise me in his rightful mind to put my head office in Spanish Town. So what can be done and what is being done to curb the problem? Because even when I go to Spanish Town, yes, I agree, the police is there, but the fear is still there. You can literally feel it around you. So what other way can policing be done to really let people feel more comfortable living and working in and around Spanish Town, and considering that where my business is concerned, the prospect of buying land there is far more affordable to set up businesses. And, you know, and it would be good to see a BPO facility there, but the crime is a problem. The crime is a problem. I can get BPO companies to come to Jamaica, but the crime is a problem. That's one thing you have to look into.
I'll just weigh in with a few points. And again, a forum of this nature is critical, and it adds value to the question you're posing. But we have to first start somewhere. The point of departure here is that controlling crime often by itself is not the business solely of the police. We have to accept and understand that first and foremost. And we have to understand that if you deal with crime and get it to a level today, it will take about 3-4 years for the fear of crime to be impacted. So you do have crime and you do have the fear of crime. Fear of crime will go down when you have a consistency in terms of continued reduction in crime and people become comfortable. The locations, again, pose uniqueness. You may have extortion in one location, you may not have it in another location. So it depends on the dynamics of the criminal environment. Generally, they are all criminogenic in nature, but what you would use to determine where you go will have to look at the uniqueness and the location and the gangs which are operating there and the response of the police and the culture. It's many things. But what I would say now generally is that, number one, business community have to work with law enforcement in order to deal with the crime in any particular locale. Two, you have to also engage not just the police and the business community, but the community generally, the people who live and operate in the respective area. You have to bring everybody to the table, because crime only benefits the criminal, only them. So if you can find a way to get all these stakeholders in one place at one time to speak to the issues and the challenges, then what you'll be doing there is the same multi-dimensional approach which all sit at the table, all look at the challenges, all write down the solution, all implement them, to which all will benefit, and that is the way to go. I know it is happening now in some of the locations. I know it's not at a stage where we can all say we're comfortable, but the engagement has to go on, it has to continue, and until everyone is on board and everyone is moving in the right direction and everyone is realizing that it is my problem, it is not the business community, it is not the citizen by themselves, it is not the police, it is this tripartite relationship and association that is necessary to dealing with the issue. So again, it all has to do with bringing everyone to the table, look at the issues, look at the challenges, and roll out a plan, a strategy, and then implement it. It's a process. It's a process.
Thank you very much. All right, members, I thank you for your participation this evening. And as I close off this segment, let me now invite Ms. Althea Peart to move the official vote of thanks.
Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. This has been a real engaging evening, and all of you here has made it what it is. It is my privilege at this time to extend gratitude, first of all, to our keynote speaker, Major General Anthony Anderson, for his contribution and insightful thoughts. We are encouraged, sir, that indeed there are solutions. Special thanks to ACP Clifford Chambers and Lieutenant Commander George Overton. Thanks for your thoughts in helping to foster a safer and more stable society. To Mrs. Dwyer Powell and Mrs. Suarez Ellis, thank you for doing the introductions. To a very, very faithful president, we acknowledge your work and your dedication. These forums are, in fact, quite meaningful, they're relevant, and I'm sure you'll agree that they are timely. Our sponsors could not have done it without your partnership. Special thanks to Guardsman Armored, and thanks also to the Gulfview Hotel. We recognize and acknowledge the media representatives. Thank you for coming. To the police, and I see also members of the JDF, thank you for being here and for keeping us safe. To all the distinguished ladies and gentlemen who are here this evening, we appreciate your participation. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm sure you'll agree that we've had a very impactful meeting, and we will continue, I'm sure, to work at reducing crime and to growing our own parish. Collectively, as I said before, we can contribute to making and creating better outcomes. Thanks again for your presence. You have indeed all made it a beautiful evening. Thank you. I'm going to invite Major General. Could you please join me?
Guardsman really got started by accident. One of my hobbies was to train security dogs, and there was a requirement by other security companies who didn't own dogs. Of course, I rented them 4 or 5 dogs that I owned for patrolling industrial compounds, and then later on found that they were not looking after the dogs like I would. So I decided maybe we should hire our own handlers and go and see if we can get a few contracts for ourselves, which we did very quickly. Then it just grew and grew. In 1977, we started Guardsman with a simple goal to help people to feel really safe and to feel happier and healthier, to live in comfort and confidence. We started with 3 or 4 guards, and we're now close to 7,000 guards. We as a group have revolutionized the way that security services are provided in Jamaica and in the Caribbean. We're the first to introduce armed response teams. We were first to establish a central station. And since then, we've been the innovators in every aspect of the business. We were by far the largest section of K9 patrol guards. Jamaica's never seen a fleet of armored trucks like we have now, 80 armored trucks. The bigger you are in this business, the better you are. So if an emergency does crop up, we have hundreds of guards available. Since the Guardsman Group was started, we have made it our principal duty to satisfy our clients' needs. And we ensure that each customer, from the concerned parent to the discerning businessman, gets the individualized customer service. The customer invites us in and say, what his problems are. And we're the ones who design the solution for them to solve their problems. At Guardsman, we're very solutions-oriented. We've actually set the standard in every aspect of the security business in Jamaica. And we're going to keep it that way.